Welcome back to the reverb tutorial. This is tutorial 2E. Now we're gonna apply the reverb in Reaper. I recommend you to use good headphones from now on. Of course, it's best if you use the headphones for all the tutorials because you just hear better what you will be listening to or do on your own. I recommend those headphones because they have quite a neutral frequency response, meaning what you play from the Reaper session is quite neutrally played by the headphone. So first I'm gonna put in my headphone and set it up in Reaper. Let me quickly check.
Find itself alone.
All fine. Because we start applying reverb, we want to hear what we're dealing with, what parameters we change. And first question is, how do we apply the reverb in Reaper? This is maybe the most important question beside the whole sound design questions. How should the reverb sound? The problem we have in film post-production is we usually have a lot of sounds needing the same reverb. As I've said in the last tutorial, we have Foleys, meaning all the sounds accompanying the movements of our protagonists. We have voices, we have music, we have atmospheric sounds, we have FX, and the categories Foley, voice and FX, as long as they play in the same aural environment, they need the same reverb. Now, if I put the reverb on every single item and I want to change one parameter, I have to change them on all the items I've put the reverb as an FX. That's why we have other concepts of applying this reverb. And the concept we're going to use is so-called send-return concept. Meaning, when I route a send from my track, where I have my voice placed, to the return, which is incoming again in my Reaper software as a separate track. So the track itself looks exactly the same as the other tracks, but there is an input in this track which I send from my track with the voice. This looks like that. First step is I'm gonna place a new audio track underneath my video by pressing Command-Shift-N. That's my new track. Looks exactly the same. Can contain audio, video, MIDI, whatever. We don't place anything here because we use it as the return for our reverb. Second step, I need as an FX, you see this button here. Here you do the whole processing of everything your track contains or what is incoming as a signal on my track. When I go in here, I see, there is already two FX on this track. We don't need these two plugins right now, so I remove them. Now I go on the Add button, and I already typed in filter Reav. That's the name of the plugin. It's Reverbate. That's the reverb plugin we're gonna use in Reaper. So I add it, and there I have my plugin. We're gonna come back to all the parameters, because first we want to send signal there, because right now nothing is being sent to my reverb. First I want to name it. That's my reverb. I also give it a color. Usually I set this to orange, something like this. Okay, so that's my reverb. And now, first option, how I can route from one track to another is by simply clicking here, hold, and go on the routing button of the track I want to send my signal to. Let go. Then this window pops up. I double click here, so I apply the reverb. That's also an envelope I can change the amount I want to send. Double click. Now I'm sending into my reverb.
I have a question, Thomas.
Yes.
Is that a sort of a volume but fader where what you're sending?
Exactly.
Okay.
So as long as I'm on infinite minus, it's like having your volume down on your handy. So what I'm doing right now when I open up is apply volume. But not the main volume, it's the second volume. So when you imagine this track has now two outputs, I can apply as many outputs as I want. I can send to wherever I want. Right now we have two. We have the main output leading into the folder Vox, and the second output leading into the input reverb. So it's always output, input, output, input. So the send is my output. As long as I don't send anything, nothing will happen. So when I play now, I can do... so when I click the route button, I get the same view. I get the same fader here. Right now, nothing happens.
Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd
Exactly.
to pry
Right
into
now,
thine hour
I
of
don't see
secrecy.
anything coming in here.
Thy
And
soul
now,
shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of alone, mid dark.
what have I found out now? I found out that when I press mute, not only my voice track gets muted, but also what is happening on the reverb. We usually want to keep it like that. This concept is called post pan, post fader. So by muting is the same as pulling the fader down. So when I pull my fader down, I also pull down the fader leading into my reverb. Right now, I would love to listen to my sound of the plugin with the main out muted. So what I'm going to do now is I go into pre-fader mode, which means this fader is not connected anymore with this fader. They're not connected anymore. I can adjust them without any connection. So now I can go on solo here.
Thy soul shall find itself alone.
And I hear much more reverb. I still hear dry signal because in my plugin, and now we come to the plugin parameters. The first one is this section here. It's called wet and dry. Dry means the amount of dry signal being sent to the output of my reverb track, and the wet is the reverberated signal. So when I pull down my wet signal,
Thy soul shall find itself alone.
I hear nothing but dry signal.
Thy soul shall find its...
Double click and pull this one down. I only hear reverberated signal.
Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the...
In our concept, how we use the reverb with the send and reverb, we don't need dry signal coming out of my reverb. So please always pull down the dry amount to 0. Why is that? Because we always play a mix out of dry signal, which leads into the Vox folder and then to my master, plus reverberated signal being routed from my tracks. So it can be multiple tracks. I send my reverb send to the reverb input, and from the input only reverberated signal to the master. When I press solo on my voice track as well, I have the mix between the dry signal and the reverberated signal.
Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry to thine hour of secrecy.
Now, when I play around with this reverb, I would love to see this button here. So my volume send into my reverb, I would love to see this one as an envelope. How do I do this? I go into my automation window. There I see all these parameters and I see send envelopes. I would love to see send as a track envelope, and there it pops up. The advantage of this concept is you can have exactly this view on all the tracks you want to use the reverb with, and maybe in some parts you want more, in other parts you want less reverb. For example, I could have here, I press Command Shift, pull that down. Then I want more reverb, and from here until here I don't need any reverb because maybe my protagonist comes very close, so I don't need the reverberation. Then again I want reverberation. Please follow those instructions and play around with your voice. Apply reverb. Also, I would love to see in your session when you hand it in this send volume. So I want you to know how you can apply more or less reverb. We're going to listen to what we've done now.
Thy soul shall find itself
Almost
alone,
dry.
mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone, not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Be silent in that solitude, which is not loneliness, for then the spirits of the dead who stood in life before...
So that's the concept of send, return. What we still miss is we would love to see how this reverb reacts. Let's say in here we have a different reverb than in this part of the movie, because we are going into another scene. So one is scene 1, which is maybe, I don't know, a bedroom, let's say. Let's try to achieve a bedroom here, and then a church, because that's quite a big difference. Okay, this means we need another reverb. We can have another one by Command-Shift-N, Reverb 2. And that's exactly how we do it. So we're gonna route onto Reverb 2. Another one pops up. We set it to pre-fader at the moment so we can listen to it. We go into FX, we get rid of those two. We add the reverbate like this. And now let's say the reverb 2 is the church. Reverb 1 is the bedroom. So now we have two reverbs being sent. We go into the read and we would love to see the reverb send volume for my second reverb as well. And that's exactly how we do it. We might have 5 different rooms in our film. So we have 5 reverbs and we have on all the tracks, we need those reverbs. We have the respecting sends to these reverbs. And that's how we have organized the metrics from which tracks we send to which reverbs. Because maybe we have 20 tracks with FX. What we do now is adjusting those rooms. We would love to do this in one step. So we only make this portion here. So we have reverb being sent more to the church reverb here and then to the bedroom. So that means we press Command Shift so we can pull down this line like that. We need our loop and let's play it. They will sound quite the same because we haven't changed any parameter of the characteristic of the reverb yet.
Not one of all the crowd do pry into thine hour of secrecy. Thy soul shall find itself
Now we're gonna
alone,
adjust.
mid dark thoughts
The
of the
reverb
grey
of the
tombstone.
bedroom should be small, so we make it a small size. Usually a bedroom is rather damp because we have the bed, we have maybe a curtain, we have stuff that's absorbing sound, so we damp more by going closer to 100. We also have a filter for the so-called initial delay, and that's where the first reflections come from. So when I clap in this room, for example, we have the floor in 1 meter, then some walls in like 2 or 2.5 meters, and the ceiling in about 2 meters as well. So we would have a small delay. In a church, let's say we have a delay of 100 milliseconds. What does that mean? The first reflection takes 100 milliseconds. As you probably know, sound propagates with 340 meters per second, which would mean 100 milliseconds would be 34 meters away. That's a bit too much. Let's maybe go to about 30, 35 milliseconds. So that would be a third, so around 10 meters away. That's where my walls are. And that's one important factor in the perception of reverb in our brain, is the first reflections. Room size of our church would be big, maybe around 80, and not too much dampening because we have many walls with hard surfaces. What we haven't done yet is pull down the dry. So we only hear wet signal. Let's listen to it again.
Not one of all the crowd do pry into thine hour of secrecy. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of...
And the big advantage of those envelopes is you can do this gradually. You can write your lines to whatever taste. You can add a little bit here or pull down a little bit because there is coming too much into the reverb return.
Not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Thy soul shall...
Now when the overall amount is still a bit too much, I can pull it down here as a whole for this section. Also here, maybe on the church.
Not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Thy soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. Not one of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy.
You also see how can control how much reverb is being sent from the reverb return to the master by checking those volume
Not
meters.
One of all the crowd to pry into thine hour of secrecy. Thy soul shall find itself alone.
So if I want to place those in a folder, I just do another track here, and that's my xx returns. Then I open up and close it here. Now they are all in the same folder, xx returns. Perfect. We miss two parameters. We haven't checked yet. Check those out too. One of them is a so-called low pass, meaning the highs will be cut. So the high frequencies like the and higher, even higher, will be cut. I can demonstrate it maybe on the church.
Not one of all the crowd not one shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. My soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. My soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone. My soul shall find itself alone, mid dark thoughts of the grey tombstone.
So basically I can kill the whole reverb tail, or at least the high frequency of the reverb tails. I use this quite often if I want to have very dull reverbs tails, but not with too many highs. I use this reverb a lot, or this function, this low pass function. If I don't have it in my reverb plugin, I can of course have it in a second xx instance with an equalizer, which Jeroen will tell in the next tutorial. Thanks a lot. I think it was quite a long tutorial, this one, but if you get this concept well and really apply it in your session now, then you have learned a lot, and you will never do the mistake of applying the reverb just on the item, which makes it very hard to change when we go further down the road into mixing 5/1 projects. We really need this concept in that way. So thanks a lot for watching, and see you soon.